Katherine Perez-Estolano. She's the city leader at ARUP. She's an expert in urban planning, transportation, and stakeholder engagement. In the land use and field, she is highly regarded for developing complex public participation strategies that require collaboration among multicultural communities. With her background in community development, private real estate development, transportation policy, and urban planning, she is a recognized leader in the planning and development fields and speaks at conferences throughout the country. And Katherine was also on the California High-Speed Rail Authority board and on our board as well. So please welcome Katherine Perez-Estolano.
Good morning. Thanks, Andy. I would like to take, first of all, an opportunity to say thank you to everybody for being here. This is the only national conference that focuses on high-speed rail and the delivery of that particular program, which is definitely moving out of just an idea and into a real project. So what I wanted to do is to take a step back, because I think what we're doing is we aren't paying attention to the user. And yesterday there was a lot of conversation around the stations and the design and all of that. But one of the tantamount things here at Metro is to improve the user experience, because if you can't do that, you're not going to be able to get people to use transit. And so Metro, to their credit, is taking a great deal of effort to understand what is the needs of people, how do they experience it, what's good, what's bad, how to improve it, because they understand that the race for the transit user is going to be a challenge. So what I want to do is I want to talk about the future of rail from the user side. As a member of the High-Speed Rail Board for 2.5 years and focused on really the transit and the seamless transition between car, bike, walking to the train, to your destination was such a fundamental part of what we were thinking about as we were going through working with the cities in partnership. And so what I want to do, and I have a thing here, so I'll just, basically what Pat went over is pretty much the biggest part of the statewide rail program, the Modernization Rail program. It was an investment that High-Speed Rail made to basically bring up the entire rail network. So as High-Speed Rail came in, that we would have new systems that would be able to embrace high-speed rail, and we would be able to actually make the whole system operate much more efficiently. So the idea was to basically, okay, and this is actually available on the High-Speed Rail website. It has projects, a lot of the Northern California Caltrain electrification programs, those things are underway, whereas in Southern California, we have a MOU with the Southern California Association of Governments. But the whole point is to really invest in the backbone of our statewide rail system. We locally are putting resources into the regional connector, which if you have had time to go into downtown LA, just a few blocks from here, there's streets that are all cut up, and that's the underground regional connector. That's basically going to make a seamless path for us, but also the investments in MetroLink and making sure that our regional commuter system is ready to support high-speed rail when it comes into place. So that is the Modernization Rail program. But the thing that I like to, again, move into is really understanding cities. And what I think is important to really take into perspective, and I'll talk to Andy about putting this on the discussion for next year, is really the future of cities and how rail is such a fundamental part of cities. Having the opportunity to understand the powerful impact that urban rail can have on people, movement of people, ideas, and that creativity that emerges from people connecting is such an important story that we cannot forget, that we are not just building a railway, we're not just building a corridor, we are improving people's lives. And so one of the things that I've been able to have an opportunity to look at is really the megacities issues. And we are a mega region in Los Angeles. And for the first time in my professional life, we have more money than God to deal with our problems. And so this is a time at which we can really harness the opportunities or we can actually blow it away. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to weave in all of the redevelopment, the regeneration, the recapturing of our communities with the river, with the Olympics, with everything else that we can take advantage of. We have a mayor committed to that. We have supervisors, we have state officials, we have a governor who I think is fighting the federal government as we speak. The point is that LA is poised to completely transform itself. And so looking at cities like Shanghai, where we're looking at population density and densification that we've never seen before. And what does that mean? And just to give you an idea, LA, if you haven't seen all the cranes in downtown Los Angeles, LA is vertical. It is going vertical. And we are absolutely doing as much infill around our transit stations because the demographic shift that we are feeling, we're a very young population here in Los Angeles, but around the world, we have aging populations, we have young populations, people who don't want to drive, who can't afford to drive, who find it much more useful to get around in different ways. What we're doing is we're seeing a lot more people move into the middle class to be able to take advantage of alternatives. It's capturing the folks with those alternatives in choice, not to use my car, not to drive, not to use those things, but to actually move into transit. And some of the retrofitting we're doing here in Los Angeles is trying to understand how to connect the economic activities that we have together with those demographic pushes. The biggest issue we're facing is housing, and I think every big urban city is dealing with the housing issue. We have not solved it. We are on the path to trying to figure it out, but certainly as we're getting older and as we're having this new big bubble of young people coming into the age of car ownership, there's a shift that is underway. The other big thing that's a tantamount issue for California is climate change. We're serious about it here. We take it seriously. We've taxed ourselves. We're taxing polluters through our our cap and trade program, but we're taxing ourselves to basically address these issues. And so we have significant things that we're dealing with as a result of climate change. We just had terrible rains, we had floods, we had deaths, we have a lot of these things that are in our region that we absolutely feel are as a result of human activity. These are things that we are addressing, whether it's the storm surge or how we're dealing with new growth and development, where it should go. But we are, I think, and in California, I hope what we're doing is a model in terms of addressing the emissions and the greenhouse gas reduction goals. So this is something that we are focused on, and certainly this governor, I hope the next governor continues the kind of clarion call to the rest of the world to continue to move forward in that direction. The thing that I think is also incredibly dynamic and what we try to do on high-speed rail is really integrate technology. We wanted to make sure that we were not building a system for the past. Yes, we were using a system of rail as the mode, but that experience of getting on the train and being able to absolutely function, have access to Wi-Fi, make sure that you were fully able to be engaged with a lot of different players at the same time, this is where we're going. And one of the difficult things, and I think the scary part, is what is technology going to do to the delivery of a lot of these systems. We are absolutely in the middle of understanding how big data is affecting our decision making. It should absolutely improve our efficiency. It should improve how we deliver and understand the performance measures of particular facilities. So we are trying to understand how we can use all of that information, boil it down so that we can personalize the experience so that you as a user, as a customer of a service, of a system, have absolutely all the information and tools available to you. And in a world of mobile devices and changing technologies, this is what we need to embrace. So as we're looking at new technology, how we can use new systems to improve how we make decisions, one of the biggest challenges we face is to make sure that we understand scenarios, we do beta testing, but that we understand before we actually deliver something, What are the possible impacts? And using technology and different kinds of tools to be able to do that. We are in a place to understand what are the potential impacts. Well, let's kind of try a 3D printed model. Let's run that through a beta test and see what the performance level is. Those are some of the things that we're talking about in the delivery of transportation. So, as I said, the future of cities is so closely tethered to how we think about urban rail. And I remember one of my former colleagues on the board is with us today too, and she'll speak later today. But I remember people would come to me and say, well, what about Hyperloop? And I'm like, bring it on. As long as people have alternatives to getting around, that is what we're trying to do. We are not about this mode versus this mode, and we're not against each other. What we're trying to do is deliver as many options to people as they can actually choose from. You get to pick. Do you want to go? I was just touring the boring tubes that Mr. Musk is doing here in Southern California. These are advances that we need to not be afraid of. We need to understand them. What are the impacts in terms of equity and accessibility? Those are absolute policy issues. But the other part of it is how can we bring those options and then those alternatives into the menu of choices for the user? Again, to be very focused on how the user experiences things. And as we bring automation and semi-autonomous alternatives, what does that look like? Here in Los Angeles County, we're going to be doing that. I know San Francisco, you guys are already doing it, but there's we are now in Los Angeles beginning to do some of those pilot demonstration projects. And so, again, in a world where labor unions are paramount to having big decisions be made, we need to understand what does that mean for our workforce, what does that mean for the delivery and movement of goods, movement of people, and how do we ensure that we don't lose people in the process. The other big issue is really the energy and resources challenge. One of the biggest things that we face in really servicing high-speed rail is the energy component. That's some of the things that we had always talked about, was how are we going to have enough battery storage and resources to move this train? And I would offer that that is still a bit of an unknown. And so, but this just goes writ large. This is something that we think about we have to start thinking about how are we going to use our resources? How are we thinking about energy? It's no longer, for me, the issue is really the storage. Where are we going to put it? Because there's going to be times when we're not going to be able to rely on grids as we disaggregate and we begin to press down into the very local, to your house, to your apartment, to your unit. That's where we're going. So as we begin to think about a different kind of economy, this circular economy, where we're bringing things regeneration by design, and alternative forms of fuel, we're going to be using different kinds of methods to actually move our systems, and we have to be willing and open to those ideas. So this is the user journey. One of the things that I think is really critical to us is, as people who are interested in the delivery of this system, of high-speed rail, of mobility, is understanding how real people get around. And so what we have done at ARUP is really kind of look at a whole bunch of scenarios. Maybe you're an employee, maybe you're a family, maybe you're retired, but how do you look at the seamless alternative of transportation modes? You shouldn't even give it a thought. I was just texting my daughter, and I apologize, Pat. She's stuck waiting for her plane in Boston because it's snowing. No train alternative to get here to California. She has no high-speed rail. But she's stuck because the weather elements have made it impossible for her to make her journey. And so the issues of how these things are affecting our ability to actually exchange ideas, have economic activity. This is the kind of world when we're thinking about what is the future of transportation, and we look at somebody, we're making up kind of names and scenarios, but this is the future where people are having wearables. I'm sure I have not transitioned to a wearable. I'm still a little bit I'm still not there, but I know everybody knows where I am because I have an iPhone, and I know CIA knows I'm here, but I mean, and probably others in the world, but the thing is that the wearables and wayfinding and the holographic communications, we are at the point where we are now going to be touching soft screens. We're going to be in a place where we're much more in touch with just the entire holistic part of who we are in terms of our very health. And there's this idea of, you go up to a screen, you don't really buy, it's just images, you don't really buy it, you're buying it off the screen and it pops out. In other words, they don't have to keep a fleet of these things. They just keep what you want on an image. And so all that energy that comes from the refrigeration, you don't have to do that anymore. It's just a picture. You just hit it and it comes out. So all this idea of basically using technology through a virtual method of how people are going to exchange goods and services at these rail stations. Again, what is that customer experience? How can we have this be a seamless journey for people? And we have these pods. There's already pods. I don't know if you guys have seen these pods. There was a technology conference last year, LA Commotion in LA, where pods will follow you. They'll geocode on your calves, on your feet, and it basically is a little tube that carries all your junk with you. So essentially, say this young, Hugo goes shopping, he has a pod, he pops open the pod, it closes it, and it follows him. He can get lost inside of a crowd, it follows him. So, you know how you're carrying bags and you're like, oh, I don't want to go to the grocery store? Well, the pod is going to solve that for you. They're called bots and dots. And so we're changing how we're going to be experiencing places. And we have to be willing to think about, somebody like a Mariana who needs to have an office suite, mobile suites, mobile on my own time, on my own calendar. And these are the things that we're looking at, is how technology and the mobilization of our very lifestyles is going to be upon us. So here's somebody who is using all kinds of different tools so that she can actually do her job. This is what you and I are in the business of. At the end of the day, that's what we're going to be doing, is getting people around hyper access to information, even for those people who aren't part of the workforce. Because as we all know, we're getting grayer, and there's lots of people who are getting grayer, and we have to make sure that these people, the retired senior community, are part of the experience. They have to be able to get around. Maybe they don't want to drive. Maybe they shouldn't drive. But they should be able to experience place. And so being able to make these tools accessible to those who are at different parts of the spectrum is really critical. And when I say seniors, I also mean people who are with disabilities, people who need additional services. Those are things that we need to be thinking about. And last, Amazon's going to send out drones. It's going to happen. And you and I know that it's not going to be a package delivery from a truck. It's going to be little jet zimming, coming to your place, dropping it off and taking off. This is, and I don't know if you noticed that Amazon just bought Ring. Ring is a visual camera door ringer. So you know how your packages keep getting stolen when Amazon guy comes by. Essentially now Amazon has purchased the company that then actually does the full circle. And if you see if it's the Amazon delivery, it opens the gate, allows the door, and your package is no longer taken. We're getting to a place where this is now happening. And so one of the narratives is this software developer and how they are using all this different technology, which is right now, to be able to do their job and move goods around, to basically in time. I want this package, I need it by 5 p.m., bam, there you go. And then you get on your high-speed rail and you're at home. And in California, this is a very difficult slide, I apologize, but essentially the virtual shopping mall, the bots and the driverless pods, there's these pods that are going to be moving us around. And I know it sounds very fantastic, but I have to say that having been privileged to be a member of the board, having been involved in local and state government for as long as I have, I appreciate the fact that the adaptation cycle is much faster. Remember when we used to say, oh, it takes 10 to 15 years for us to get used to a new telephone or a new device? Well, now it's what, every 8 months? I got to upgrade. So now we're at a place, we're at a time where this cycle of rapid change is forcing all of us as practitioners to really think through this connectivity. And I think for me, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And that's the most important thing, is that we don't have to be kind of subject to the whims of whomever's ideas are the best. We all have to contribute to this process. And I appreciate people who are continuing to push for innovative, creative and equitable access points for people. And that's the thing that I'm very focused on, is making sure that we have access. So again, how do we think about place? How do we think about the user experience? Nice design, nice stations, that's great. But I gotta know that when somebody walks in, they know exactly where they're going because the wayfinding is good. They have the information on the mobile. They feel safe. It's well lit. It's well informed for the user. So I think with that, Andy, I took some liberty to go off script, but hopefully what it did was it just gave us a different perspective on really kind of coming back to some of the real tenets of what we're trying to do. And certainly some of the things that I am trying to, as someone who is very invested in the outcome of this project, hoping that we have some good news from California in the next few days on high-speed rail in California, and that we have some leadership that's going to make us actually continue to move it. I will tell you that we are actually involved in the Texas high-speed rail project, and that project is probably going to come out of the ground in faster delivery than California, but it is Texas, so it's a little bit different there. So I just want to say thank you, and we have just like 5 minutes for questions if there are any questions for Pat or myself. Does anybody have any questions?